Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the University of Chicago event. I have the distinct privilege of kicking this event off, and I think for some reason, given the topic of higher education, they selected the person with the least number of degrees and said, you get to introduce it. And so that's what I'm going to do. Well, really welcome again. As I said, it's going to be a really fantastic discussion today. Talking about higher education, I was reflecting on it in terms of what a difference education, and in particular higher education, makes. Looking back at my own sort of series of degrees, whether it was electrical engineering, computer science, and then ultimately the business degree out of Booth. And that combined with the opportunities that I was given in terms of immigrating to the United States, joining the software industry just as the worldwide market for software was opening up and with no regulations, if I could say so, was just like winning 3 lotteries consecutively. But I go back though to the teachers, how the intellectual basis of what I learned, whether it's in electrical engineering, computer science, or in business degrees. People even like Steve Kaplan. Steve Kaplan, I still think about his case studies whenever I'm doing any evaluation of any sorts. He comes to mind. Marvin Zonas, the one thing that I've always gone back is remembered, the leadership class. There's a lot I've forgotten from University of Chicago, but the one person I remember is the things that he taught us in the leadership class. And it's just amazing as to the impact education has and higher education has. Our panel discussion today will discuss how we can provide similar opportunities to others, how we can expand this access to high quality higher education, how can we make it more affordable, which is definitely one of the big social issues of our times, how can we ensure universities are always at the frontier of groundbreaking research that impacts our planet, our businesses, and our society. These are the challenges, but most important topics. And lucky that we have a panel which has all the background in academia, business, public policy to go really tackle this. So we have President Zimmer, who has led the University of Chicago since 2006. He's the 13th person ever to lead the university. His background in mathematics, where he specialized in geometry, particularly ergodic theory. Is that what it is? I got it? Okay, God, I should have read it before. Lie groups and differential geometry that requires translation. And Dame Shafik is the director of London School of Economics and Political Science. She's taught at Georgetown and Wharton and has played vital roles in the World Bank, IMF, and the Bank of England. And then finally, of course, David Rubenstein, our moderator, who truly does not need an introduction. David's the founder and co-executive chairman of the Carlyle Group, one of the world's leading and most successful investment firms. As he'll describe, he's the God's gift to all private equity. He's chairman, board of trustees of John F. Kennedy Center of Performing Arts, Council on Foreign Relations, and Smithsonian Institute. He graduated from Duke, and of course, he earned his law degree, which is the only thing that counts, from the University of Chicago Law School. David's a great businessman and a philanthropist, and he cares deeply about addressing the most pressing challenges facing our society today, like this one. He's also a great interviewer. We were all wondering backstage what he's going to have as questions, and I'm glad I am not in the hot seat this year, getting his questions. So it's my great pleasure to hand it over to David.
Okay, so how many of you were here last year? Okay, how many of you, after hearing last year, went out and bought Microsoft stock? Okay, you were up 50%, 50%. So I've been guaranteed by Satya that you will be up another 50% if you buy it again this year. So thank you for that introduction. And how many of you are University of Chicago graduates? Okay, how many have more than 1 degree from University of Chicago? More than 2 degrees? Anybody? Wow. And how many of you teach at University of Chicago? Anybody? No? How many of you want to get their children to University of Chicago? Okay, that's why you're here. Okay. How many of you have given to the annual campaign? How many to the capital campaign? How many want to give to the capital campaign? All right, okay. Okay, so let's start. Bob, when you took over, as we heard earlier, the University of Chicago was ranked number 13 by U.S. News, now 3 or 4, something like that, and obviously with a relatively modest endowment compared to those ahead of you. What is the biggest single change at the University of Chicago since you took over in 2006?
The biggest change. So when I became president, I would say that I'd known the university very well because I'd been there for 25 years before leaving.
You were head of the math department and deputy provost?
I was head of the math department, deputy provost, vice president for research. And what I believed was that the University of Chicago had a set of stories it was telling itself that were not true, that there was a degree of complacency that needed to be overcome, that there was a degree of resignation that needed to be overcome, and that the main task actually was getting everybody reanimated, re-excited, and recommitted about the enduring values of the university and how they could be realized going forward. That had many, many concrete things to be done.
When you first took over as president, how many people asked you, can you give them some help in getting their child in as an undergraduate?
Yeah, well, there was sort of one piece of paper that listed them all.
Okay. And do you get any of those calls now?
Yes, I do.
And what do you say?
I say that the admissions office handles all these decisions.
Okay, and today, it's my theory, you've heard me say this before, but I actually believe it's sort of tongue-in-cheek, but it's actually true. If you're a graduate of the University of Chicago, and the university is going this way, why should you care? Since you already got your degree, my theory is that people will think you're not that smart because your degree is going down in value, but why should alums care if your degree is going down? Why should they care if the university's 13 or 3 or 25 or 1? Why should they care?
Why should they care? Well, I have my own view as to why they should care, which is that that in fact the university really should be a lifelong community that you're part of, and like any community you're part of, you want it to be great, and that while rankings are peculiar in that there's an arbitrary formula in them that somebody sitting in some office creates, the things that are being measured are often of interest. So they're of some value, but one can't take them that seriously. But one wants to be part of an excellent institution for one's life.
But you don't subscribe to my theory that if the university, you graduated when the university is number 13, university becomes number 3, that people will think you're smarter than you really are, right? You don't agree with that?
I do agree with it.
Okay. So, Dame Shafik, how do you get to be called a dame? How do you get that?
There's a mysterious process. Actually, the truth is, there's an open nomination process, and so any member of the public, well, you can't apply, but somebody has to nominate you.
And once you get it, can you give it up, like HRH? Can you give it up and say I don't want it anymore? Or you can't do that?
Well, there was a recent case of the chief executive of Royal Bank of Scotland during the financial crisis, who was a sir, the male equivalent of a damehood, and he had it withdrawn after the collapse of RBS.
Any graduates of the London School of Economics here? Okay. All right. So for those who did not go, which is most people here, just tell us in 1 minute, what is the London School of Economics? How many students do you have? What's your endowment? And why should University of Chicago graduates care about the success of London School of Economics?
Okay. So the LSE is, I would argue, the world's leading social science institution. We were founded in 1895 to know the causes of things for the betterment of society. That's the mission. We have 11,000 students, half undergrad, half postgrad. We're the most global major university in the world. 70% of the students are international, only 30% from the UK. Of that 70%, 30% Asian, 20% European, 10% American, 10% rest of the world. We are ranked second only to Harvard in the social sciences, And I would argue our endowment is peanuts. Our endowment is less than 1/2% of Harvard's. And so my view is that we are much smarter and better value for money.
So if you had Harvard's endowment, you would be
Oh my God,
unbelievable,
we would rule the
right?
world, definitely.
I see. So, name a couple of your most famous graduates in recent years that people might have heard of.
Well,
Other than you, you're a graduate as well, right?
I'm a graduate. So some recent, maybe just some historical ones. John F. Kennedy, Patrick Moynihan for American audiences. Let's see, Mick Jagger.
Okay. All right. So
He didn't actually finish his degree. He decided to make a career change from economics
now, but it's called the London School of Economics and Politics,
and political science.
Political Science. So why was it called LSE, not LSE PS?
I know.
They just don't do that.
The political scientists really hate that. But it got abbreviated. We actually have 25 departments. We cover all the social sciences.
So if I'm a high school student, and let's suppose I'm living in London, and I want to go to Cambridge, Oxford, or LSE, why should I go to LSE over Oxford or Cambridge?
So the LSE, a bit like Chicago, is a very urban university. We are in the middle of London, 10 minutes from the City of London, 10 minutes from Whitehall, 10 minutes from the cultural heart of London. And the founders put it there because they want it to be of the world. It is the opposite of an ivory tower. Every day we have prime ministers, presidents, Nobel laureates, people involved in the policy world, leading business people there on campus. So if you are someone who really likes to get your hands dirty and be of the world, it's a more fitting place.
Now, the money for the University of Chicago initially came from John D. Rockefeller, but he didn't put his name on it, I think, that's right. He didn't want that. So how much of your time do you have to spend raising money to supplement what John D. Rockefeller gave you in 1895?
Quite a bit. But there is a kind of space before university, if you were interested. But I would say, the way I think about fundraising is really not just we need money, but there are really very set of concrete things that we want to accomplish, and you need funding to accomplish concrete things that are expensive and sometimes difficult. So I actually like it from that point of view because it doesn't just feel like I'm filling budget holes. It feels like you have a very clear concept as to what it is you want to get done to make the university greater, and raising the money is just a piece of doing that, along with several other things you need to do to get everything done.
So University of Chicago is famous for many things: economics, business school, law school, I would say social sciences, among many things. Not famous for engineering. So who told you to come up with the idea of having a school of molecular engineering, and how did you persuade Tom Pritzker to just write out a check for $100 million for that?
So the engineering issue sort of always bothered me, and this was one of these stories that the university told itself, that it was good that we didn't do engineering because we do pure things and applied things somehow we don't do. And my own view was always, even though my own mathematics is very not particularly applied, that thinking about engineering that way was, I never thought it was the right thing to do, but particularly with the evolution of technology, the boundary between science and engineering became so porous that you were doing the institution harm for not developing a program in engineering. So we spent a long time thinking about this. What is it we can do? Where's our comparative advantage? Where can we be great? Because just looking at MIT and saying, well, they do engineering, well, let's do that, was an obvious loser. So we spent a long time thinking about exactly what to do, came up with a plan, and Tom was very generous.
You just call up somebody and say, I need $100 million, and they say, okay, tomorrow, can you get it tomorrow? Is that quickly enough?
It was a little more work.
More than that, okay. So my experience in life is that many times you have people who are known for many things, but there's one thing that they're most famous for, but they actually don't like to be known for that one famous thing because they have other things. In your case, you're going to be known forever as the man who cares about free speech and those kinds of things because of your famous statement there, and you're the leader in that area, and many people have written that you're the best university president of the United States in part because of that. So where did that idea come from of focusing on free speech, and does it upset you that people think that's your main thing that you do when you do everything else?
Well, just to answer the first part, it was always so built into the nature of the University of Chicago that when I just saw what was happening elsewhere, that I knew we weren't going to do that, but I also recognized that we actually needed a place to stand, because saying, well, that's just part of our culture is not adequate. And so we needed a faculty statement, we needed myself to make clear statements so that the university actually had a place to stand and a way to answer the inevitable challenges that we were going to get, which we did get. So it was just, to me, it was just a foundational issue about what the University of Chicago was and needed to remain, and what it meant to give a great education. And I keep telling people who congratulate me on defending the First Amendment, it's not about the First Amendment, it's about what, for me, I mean, First Amendment's an interesting issue, but as a private university, we're not subject to the First Amendment. And what it's about is, how do you deliver a great education? How do you create a great research environment for your faculty? That's our business. And we want to be good at our business.
All right.
That's what I said.
All right, so it doesn't bother you if people say you're famous for that, not all the other stuff?
Well, I'd like them to have a more fuller and nuanced view.
So, Dame Shafik, did you get upset if some people don't use the word dame?
I actually never use it.
You never use it? I'm the only person that ever called you that?
Yes, you can call me Minouche.
All right, your first name is?
Minouche.
Now, where'd you get that name from? Because that's not an Egyptian name, so.
No, it's, my parents couldn't agree when I was born, so they gave...
They agreed before you were born.
They agreed before I was born. They did.
So, all right,
But they didn't pre-negotiate the name,
Okay,
so I
all
was
right.
called the baby for 6
Okay,
months.
so.
And then Minouche was a nickname
Right.
that was...
So what percentage of people who go to LSE, undergraduates, are getting scholarships or financial aid? What percentage can really afford to pay it? Is that a big problem for you?
Well, it's interesting. In the UK, the university higher education financing system is different. There is a government loan program where everyone gets a loan if they apply, if you're from the UK or if you're from Europe, as long as we're in the European Union. A few more weeks. And you only have to repay if your salary goes above a certain level. And then
really?
you have 30 years to repay. And
Suppose you're getting carried interest, you're not getting a salary, but would that be counted or not?
I think it's actually just your
Oh,
salary.
it's counted? Okay, all right. Well,
But so for UK and European students, actually financing is not such a problem. They may come out with a high headline debt, but they only repay a very small proportion, and actually most students never fully repay their loans. Now, my students all repay because they're the highest earning in the UK. So they repay their loans, but a lot of students don't. So we do have a problem for scholarships for non-UK students.
right, suppose I'm a non-UK person, and I say I want to go to LSE, I want to be in London, but I'm worried that Brexit's going to weaken everything in London, including LSE. It's not going to be as strong as it was. Right. What's the argument for Brexit not hurting LSE?
Well, it hasn't hurt us yet. We haven't seen any change in application numbers or recruitment or faculty recruitment even. So that's a good sign. And, you know, universities are some of the oldest institutions in the world for a reason, because we have a pretty good business model, and politicians come and go, and the business model lasts.
Okay.
So I take the long view on these things.
Okay. Now, you have taught in the United States.
I have.
And you've taught in London. So where are the students more attentive, and where are they better?
I can't answer. I mean, the thing is, because you have brilliant students everywhere. I mean, I was lucky enough to teach at excellent universities in the US, and we have fantastic students at the LSE. I think the one thing that's different is that European students specialize earlier than American students, and there are definite pros and cons to that.
Are people obsessed with taking STEM majors so they can get a job, or they're not as obsessed with that?
Well, it's interesting. We are not a STEM university. We don't do sciences. We do social sciences. So I don't face that trade-off. What I notice is that we have now decided to make every first-year student do data sciences at the LSE, no matter what they're studying, because we figure data is going to be part of all of their careers. And then we give them the option to intensify that in subsequent years, and that is an obsession. As soon as we offered that, every student in the place wanted to do it.
Bob, when I was a law school student, I graduated in '73. It was not the safest area in the Western world, I would say, and it was complicated to walk around there. Is it much better now than it was then, and do you really have crime or not so much?
Yeah, it's definitely much better. I mean, when you look at the data, both over time and when you look at the data in Hyde Park compared to the rest of the city of Chicago. So it's much better, but it's the middle of a city, and one doesn't mistake it for not the middle of a city. So you need to pay attention like you do in the middle of every city, certainly in the United States.
The University of Chicago is famous for having a lot of Nobel Prize winners associated with it, and its faculty. When you talk to somebody who's won a Nobel Prize, do they listen because you're the president of the university and they say, I won a Nobel Prize, I'm smarter than you, or it doesn't work that way, they just listen to whatever you say?
Well, they are not exactly what I would call people who stand up and salute, shall we say.
So today you are in the middle of a capital campaign, and the capital campaign's goals have been exceeded, but you can always raise a little bit. When is the capital campaign over?
Capital campaign, the campaign actually is formally over, ended on December 31st.
But you're still taking money?
Oh yeah, we're still taking money. Not too late.
Okay, so how much have you raised so far?
Right, so the original goal was $4.5 billion. Right. We raised the goal to $5 billion, and we're likely to close it out when all the accounting is done at something around 5.4. Wow. So almost $1 billion more than the original goal.
Okay, and so that's pretty impressive. Is that the highest capital campaign Chicago's ever had?
Yeah.
By a long shot?
By a long shot.
Now, does LSE have capital campaigns?
We are about to launch one next year.
And what's your size going to be?
Very small.
Smaller than $5.4 billion?
Definitely smaller, a fraction of that. But it's a different tradition, you know, in that we don't have as well-established a tradition of
Now, at LSE, can anybody come and make a speech and not be worried about being interrupted? You have a free speech kind of ethos?
We do, and I think the work that has been done at Chicago in terms of the free speech principles has had global impact, actually. Okay. We have a very strong tradition of, we actually have a legal requirement in the UK to protect free speech as universities. And we've developed very good protocols for managing those situations. So if we have a controversial speaker, we insist on there being a neutral chair who makes sure that all points of view are heard. Obviously, you worry about the security issues, and we take care of those. But we have not had a problem.
Okay. Now, Bob, when you took over as president in 2006, what was the acceptance rate of undergraduate applications at the university?
Well, I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was quite high.
About 60%, something?
Something around. If it wasn't 60% then, it was within recent.
All right, what is the undergraduate acceptance rate now?
It's about 7 or 8%, 7%.
Okay, so if somebody wanted their child to go to the University of Chicago, what's the best way to get that child in without being a water polo player?
Well, I think one of the things that the admissions office always focuses on is the fit for the university, because there are I sometimes look at the list of kids who are not getting in, and I look at their record, and I say to our dean, I say, "You've got to be kidding me. How can you reject this person?" And he says, "I've got a long list of people with exactly the same qualifications." So there's a lot of focus on the fit for the university, which is who's both going to contribute to and benefit from most the particular environment. And Some people might be better off going to other institutions if they're not really all that serious. Student, but still smart.
Now, I went to undergraduate at Duke, and there's a person from Chicago who's our basketball coach, Mike Krzyzewski. When he retires from Duke, whenever he does, would you consider bringing him to the University of Chicago to really improve your basketball team? Any possibility of that? Turn to Chicago?
I think we can't afford to pay him.
I can't afford That's probably true. All right, so what's the chance of getting into LSE if I'm an undergraduate applicant?
It's very similar. We have about 15 applicants per place, so it's about
1 out of 15.
6-ish%.
Okay, and those that don't get in, they go to Oxford or Cambridge?
It's, you know, it sort of balances out between them. I mean, the big difference is that we don't have legacy preferences in the UK.
Right.
It would be illegal in the UK to,
Okay.
so we have no knowledge of people's parents,
Really?
and we don't even do interviews. Oxford and Cambridge still do interviews. We don't do interviews because there's so much bias in interviews, and we found that we're better at getting students from underprivileged backgrounds if we don't interview.
Now, are you a British citizen?
I am.
All right, so do you care that Prince Harry is stepping away, or you don't really care? People in America seem to be obsessed with this. I don't know whether people in Britain are.
Oh my God, they're so obsessed. You know, it doesn't impact my life a lot, but it does feature a lot in the newspapers.
He's not a graduate of LSE, right? No.
He's not.
Oh, okay.
He's not, nor is Meghan Markle, but I wish them well.
Okay, well, maybe he'll need to get a degree soon. You never know, because you have to get a job. So, Bob, if somebody, why should people want to get an undergraduate degree or college degree? Some people say, look, I'm good at being a plumber, I'm good at being a carpenter, I really don't care about the things you care about. What's the advantage of an undergraduate degree for somebody who's really, let's say, doesn't care about intellectual kinds of things? Is it going to make their life better?
Yeah, so that's a really interesting question. Interesting question as to, does everybody need a college degree in exactly the way that they're thought about? And I think people need an education. People need to learn how to do things, and they need to learn how to think about whatever they're doing or experience whatever they're doing with some degree of imagination. So I think it is a fair question as to whether everybody actually needs to go to college and take what is fundamentally pretty similar concepts of what is involved in a college education.
Now, you were a math expert. You are a math expert. You have a PhD from Harvard in math, summa cum laude from Brandeis in math. So your father was a doctor?
Yeah.
So did he not want you to be a doctor? Or at least a lawyer?
No, my father, remarkably, even though he was, I would say, not an easy person and a person of strong views, was quite open about what I did. I think it annoyed him a great deal that he couldn't actually understand mathematics that I was studying, but that was okay.
Okay, and did he tell you it's hard to make a living as a mathematician compared to a lawyer or a doctor?
No, he didn't.
He didn't say that. Now, your mother is 100?
101 2 days ago.
101. Did you call her to wish her happy birthday, or?
I wrote to her and tried to call her. My mother she still doesn't like long-distance phone calls. You know,
really?
She says,
Thinks they're expensive?
She thinks they're too expensive. Yeah, and she missed some of the change in the telephone memo. So she's uncomfortable with long-distance phone calls. So I sent her an email, and I set her up with email on maybe 7 years ago when she was in the hospital for some procedure. I snuck a computer in.
What do you get a 101-year-old person for a birthday gift or something? I mean, what do they really need at 101?
I don't get her a birthday gift. I send her wishes for happy birthday.
Okay. So today in England, would you say there's greater class consciousness than there was, 25 years ago, and class distinctions? Are they as important as they were a long time ago, or are they still, are they evaporating a bit?
I think class in the old sense of the word has diminished, but income inequality, wealth inequality has got worse. So it's a different kind of problem.
Right. I see. And today, what percentage of people who graduate from high school in, let's say, England actually go to college?
50%, and that's a huge increase, because if you look back 30 years ago, it would have been less than 10%.
And is it evenly split between women and men?
In fact, more women. In fact, for the first time in human history, everywhere in the world, more women go to university than men.
And LSE, who gets higher grades, men or women?
Very interesting question. So we've looked at the numbers. The women do better on average, but the men are more polarized. So the men get more first-class degrees, and then, so the men are more bipolar, and the women are more, just to use that word. The distribution is different.
Okay. So do you ever have to go and lobby people for money? Do you go raise money? Where do you raise money from?
I do. Roughly speaking, about a third in the US, because we have lots of very distinguished alumni in the US, a third in Europe, and a third in Asia.
What do you think about my theory that when the PhD was first invented, part of it, you had to know 2 foreign languages, I think. What about instead of that, it was an expertise in fundraising? Because don't the people who have PhDs have to ask people for money more than they have to use their foreign languages? Or is that...
That's what university presidents are for.
Right. So Bob, what is the greatest pleasure of being the University of Chicago president, other than interviews like this?
Well, you know, the University of Chicago is really a place of meaning. You have, it's a place of meaning around focusing on ideas and changing paradigms, and it's a place of meaning out of empowering people for the rest of their lives through this same sense of intellectual challenge, and that's it's very gratifying.
So to date, what has been the highlight of being University of Chicago president? I mean, is there one thing that you say, this is the thing I'm most proud of, or the moment that you had that greatest joy?
Let me answer a slightly different question,
okay,
and just tell you one anecdote which stays in my mind often. And I think of it and I mention it often. So when the students come for their first year, we have an opening convocation. So the dean of the college speaks, I speak, and then there's a bit of a procession. And then there's one point where the students go one way with their future colleagues, and parents go another way, and the dean and I have a party for them. And so everybody has a little something to drink, and everybody's in either a good mood or a teary mood or both. And as I was leaving, one father came up to me and said, can I talk to you alone for a minute? And I said, sure. And he described the family's financial situation. Both parents worked, but their income together is probably roughly the median income of a family of 4 in the United States, $60,000. And he said, I never dreamt that my child would have the opportunity to go to the University of Chicago. And that was because of the tremendous generosity of one particular alum who started the Odyssey program, but then many, many other alums who added on to it. And you know, it's a very powerful thing when somebody says the university and the whole community of the university actually enabled this person's child's life to be changed. It's very powerful.
I had a similar experience. I think in hindsight I made a mistake. My parents were modest in terms of, you know, they didn't graduate from high school even. And when I graduated from the University of Chicago Law School, I said, I'm going to go study for the bar exam. Don't even bother showing up for the graduation. They really wanted to, you know, be there and see their son graduate from a law degree from the University of Chicago. And I said, it's not that important. I made a mistake. I shouldn't have done that. But anyway, my next life, I'll fix that. So we have time for questions. Okay, a couple questions. Anybody? There's one back here. Just identify yourself, and if you went to the University of Chicago, just say what degree you had or something.
Natalie Kazi, Chicago Booth, executive MBA between Singapore and London in 2010. I have a question about, you mentioned that you did some thinking about the molecular engineering school. So how much do you take into account industry and even future jobs when creating curriculum?
Well, I think that a lot. I think it's the nature of engineering that it's about producing. It's about producing tools that people use and want, and that for which, in fact, there is a purpose. So I think that the general tone and tenor of training people in engineering, in a way, is automatically actually geared to that. Nevertheless, when we set out to think about what was it that the school was going to do, because it wasn't going to do everything, we did take what we believed would be a very forward-looking view, so that one of the main things that we're focused on is quantum information science, which I think is going to be very important for all sorts of reasons. And then there are a set of other things. So I would say we absolutely tried to take a forward view as to what problems and what opportunities there were going to be in terms of the nature of what it is you could create by design at molecular scale and up, and that inevitably that connected to the future job market.
Okay, other questions? Here is one. Okay, have a mic.
Good evening. My name is Dmitry Tsvetkov. I'm from EXP18, which is a London-based program. We graduated 6 years ago. I have kind of related question. Last year, I remember there was a question about future profession which will be in demand, and I think Satya Nadella mentioned that that would be a fusion of computer science and ethics, if I remember correctly. So I want to ask this year, if you would recommend to your kids which profession you would recommend to follow. You mentioned that you asked question what your father would recommend you to go. So looking forward, what each of you would recommend to your kids, and obviously we would recommend to our kids. And by the way, I will definitely invest in Microsoft shares tomorrow.
What profession I would recommend?
To our children. To our children.
Well, I have 3 children. I have no struggling artists, no filmmakers, no social workers. I either did something right or something wrong, depending on your point of view. They all have MBAs. But my son is doing something that I wish I had done. He's getting a JD MBA, and I wish I had that because I would have known more about business, but I didn't get that. Should have done that. But in those days, the University of Chicago Business School was attractive, but the 4 years was a big opportunity cost because the starting salary for law firms was $16,000 a year, and that seemed like, $1 million a year to me then. So I didn't want to postpone getting a $16,000 a year salary by getting another degree from University of Chicago. But in hindsight, I wish I had done that, and that's what I would recommend. People who care about those kind of issues, obviously. People who want to do things different, I wouldn't recommend an MBA or JD. It just depends on. To me, the most important thing is this. You have to have a passion for what you're studying. If you don't have a passion for it, you'll never be good at it. So if your father or mother says, get an MBA, and you don't want an MBA, chances of you're doing that well in life or in that profession may not be so great. You just got to have something you're passionate about. Of course, as we all know, people change their perceptions in life of what they want to do. But if you do something just to please your parents, you're most likely not going to please yourself very much. And so I recommend to parents, don't push your kids. Do something that your kids are passionate about. That's the most important thing, I say.
I mean, I guess I would agree with that. I mean, as those of us who have children know, you don't have a lot of say. So I think one has to accept that. From a sort of professional point of view, what I would say is everyone has probably seen all this research about how many jobs are going to be automated and disappear and all of that stuff. And so what I would say, and I don't think coding is the answer. I actually think that the number of jobs that will require those kind of skills are very small in number. What's really important will be all the things that complement that. So what are the jobs that complement what robots can do? So the robots will do everything that's repetitive and repeatable. It's repetitive and formulaic. That will be automated. And that includes things like a lot of accounting, a lot of legal work, a lot of what doctors do. A lot of diagnostic work will be done by machines going forward. The thing that the robot can't do is hold the patient's hand and talk them through a treatment plan once you've got the diagnosis, for example. So it's those skills that complement what will be automated that I think one should encourage one's children to do.
Well, I also have 3 children, and the youngest one is almost 30. I do have a filmmaker, actually.
And I'm a struggling artist.
And 2 sons who went to law school. But I would say that, we're fortunate that I think the opportunities for for young people are actually extremely broad. I think they will evolve, but I think they're still going to be broad. And I think that finding something that grabs your interest is both important, because to be good at things, you actually have to work very hard at them. And to work hard, it's either torture if you don't like it, or fantastic if you do like it. And you want your kid to be happy, so you want them to do something where they're going to get up every day and say, this was a great day. So I do think that that's important, and I think the opportunities are so broad. But I would just say that people have to be open and flexible, and just realize that they're going to change, the environment's going to change, and so their direction is not going to be as much of a straight line as they might imagine it.
Okay, we have time for one more question before we finish. Bob's going to say something at the end, but
Yeah.
okay. Another question?
Daniel Denneker, Law School, 1996. Given the cost of higher education, especially in the States, and given the issues for foreign students immigrating into the States for studies, President Zimmer, do you think open online courses will ever replace the debate in the classroom?
My own view is no, when you say replace. I think what works well online, as we all know, is transmission of information. And so if you view yourself in the business of transmission of information, then it's very easy to replace you by online activity. You asked a question that suggests, which I fully agree with, that that is not actually the business that we're in. And the question of whether you can be in the learning in the teaching people how to think business, and whether that can be done online, is not obvious. I mean, some people think the answer is yes. Some people think the answer is no. It's probably the case that something can be done, but exactly how much is not obvious. So I think it's an open question, and I think there's so much information that people are evolutionarily built to absorb from simply looking at somebody's face, from understanding various nuance, that and also when you're in a group of people, for picking up all the information around their reactions, you learn an enormous amount and are absorbing a huge amount of information all the time that is not, at least right now, readily available in a standard educational way. So I don't, I think predicting the future with certainty is a fool's errand, but I want to see it before I believe it. Let me put it that way.
Comment on that?
Well, I just very much agree with President Zimmer. I think the only thing I'd add is that going to university is how our modern societies have chosen to manage the transition to adulthood. And that period is when young people learn to be independent, learn how to work with other people, learn how to deal with people from very different upbringings and backgrounds. And that transition to adulthood, you can't do that online.
So we're going to close with a comment by Bob, and I'll just introduce him a little further and say that I've worked with him over the years as a member of the Board of Trustees, and Bob has done a spectacular job of taking the university from number 13 in the university rankings, U.S. News at least, to number 3 tied for 3 at times, and with a very modest endowment relative to everybody head of the University of Chicago. And I think his reputation as one of the leading presidents of universities in the United States and the world is well established. So I think we're very fortunate to have him as the president of the University of Chicago, and I've enjoyed working with him. And I think for those of you who haven't yet contributed to the Capital campaign, I think you're going to keep the windows open for a little bit longer, because all of you, again, have an incentive to help the university. It's given you a degree. Obviously, this degree's helped you somewhat in life, and without that degree, you might not be where you are. And I think you should want to help other people do the same thing that you did, which is get a degree from a first-class university and maybe get the support that the first-class university can give to it and to the child because of your support. So, Bob, you want to?
Yeah, I just wanted to close by thanking a number of people. First of all, I want to thank David and Minouche for joining us. David, of course, as you know, is now has been for many years a regular at this event. He's been a wonderful support for the university in so many ways. But he was, in fact, one of the people who was so encouraging of us becoming involved here in Davos. And he didn't just say, go do it, but he helped us do it and continues to do so. So I want to thank him. And Minouche, of course, is doing a wonderful job. She has many years to go in this wonderful job running a wonderful institution. And I'm just really pleased that we were able to have this conversation. I also want to acknowledge Madhav Rajan, who is here, as you know, Dean of the Booth School. Many of you who are alums are alums of the Booth School. The Booth School is doing really quite extraordinarily well. Madhav has been a great leader for the school, and I know you'll have a chance to catch up with him at the reception. I also just want to thank all of you for being here. One of the things I talked about a bit was that the University of Chicago is a place of real meaning. This is not just another institution. It's not, in fact, just another university. It started out with a very distinctive mission of being a university that was different than every university in the United States at the time. That distinctiveness has flowed through to the present day, and some of the ways you see the university carrying those enduring values forward around the nature of what an education means and what it is you have to do in your community to have it are just totally built over the entire life of the university. And sometimes when I talk about free expression and open discourse, I always remind people that this is not Zimmer talking, this is the University of Chicago. And that's what it's been, and its leaders and its faculty have emphasized this since the beginning, and you can find things I say in the faculty minutes in the 1890s. And I think many of the people here recognize that this is a place of distinctive meaning, and it's an important institution for the country, it's an important institution for the world. And I just want to both thank those of you who have been so involved with the university, and there are a number of people in the room who have been, and encourage the rest of you to continue to expand your engagement with the university in whatever way works for you. So thank you all very much.
Thank you.
So have food, have drink.